So, finally, the man, the myth, the legend. You need zero introduction, but Zelda and I will do it anyway. Johan, CCO. We've got a bunch of questions for you today. We're going to dive right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
You've said the team views Helldivers 2 as a platform to grow, perhaps even into a sequel or what a sequel could be. What are the defining sequel level features that you'd like to see that haven't been introduced yet?
Right. There's quite a lot of them actually, and I think the community is pretty good at picking up on where they sort of want the game to head when you consider like sort of the sequel-esque approach to it. 8-player missions would be one of those larger open world maps where maybe you could come across other Helldivers team to then take on bigger challenges together. Operations that affect other teams as well would be those kind of level of features. Anything that really accentuates the Galactic War and the scale of the conflict that the players are in.
Awesome. Lots to unpack there. Community feedback often highlights friendly fire chaos, stratagem balancing, and mission loop pacing. How does Arrowhead prioritize which of these live service issues to address first, and how to trade off fun, chaos versus frustration?
So it's a multifaceted question. So when it comes to the way that we prioritize, I mean, a lot of times I see comments from the community that the entire team should be entirely focused on one area or the other. But one of the things that may be a little bit harder to understand is how game development studios operate. We have multiple dedicated teams that are dedicated to certain areas of the game. This means that if there's technical issues, it doesn't help if the level designers start working on trying to solve those kind of technical issues. That needs to be handled by the engine team. So therefore, each team is sort of responsible to some degree for which actions they take to the feedback that's conveyed by the community. Of course, we holistically look at all of the feedback and make decisions on what we think is going to have the largest effect on the greatest amount of people. With that said, though, we know that there's a lot of different voices. I mean, the entire community is not a unified, singular entity. Instead, there's millions of individuals. And we need to look at this from the perspective of, well, there's a couple of people, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, that are saying one thing currently. But if we sort of change that balance thing, whatever that might be, that might negatively affect another part of the community that will then raise issues around that other issue. So all this goes to say is that we do look at what everybody is saying online. We try to bake that into what we're seeing from the telemetry and try to make holistic decisions. But those holistic decisions need to then be considered with the individual teams and the resources available to those specific issues. And when it comes to the specifics on like how do we look at the chaos and the just the pure joy, the party feeling of Helldivers versus the competitive or like the challenge feeling of Helldivers, how do we balance these two and how do we create an interesting experience going forward, both for new players coming in that just wants to blow shit up and have some fun, versus the players that are played for thousands of hours and want more challenge. And given that the team is still relatively small, we need to pace ourselves in how much attention do we put on each of these individual groups. And of course, given if I had a magic wand, I would just snap my fingers and resolve all of the issues. But unfortunately, game development often comes down to prioritization, which thing to do at which time. And currently, we're of course focusing heavily on getting performance, getting stability up there, because we've had a bit too many updates that have gone out where we've been so excited about delivering new content, new experiences to players, that where we hadn't been diligent enough to ensure that the stability and quality of each release is good enough.
Thank you. Thank you for that transparency. Leading on from that, the player community often requests new enemy factions, world types, or even entirely new mechanics swimming, base building. What's realistic right now versus what you'd like to explore in future content?
It's sometimes hard for the community to recognize what the effort needed to build some of these features are. So some of these are like massive things that have large implications on the entire way that the game is played, which requires fundamental recalibrations of how the game is put together. And those might not be the obvious ones. One thing like a flying vehicle for the Helldivers would be one of those things that would require a massive effort, not because of the flying itself, but because of the way that the worlds are structured and the way that we handle sort of how enemies move about the world. While as something like swimming would be rather trivial to improve or to allow for more flexibility from the player. But then the question is, what does that do to the core gameplay experience? Like there's a lot of good ideas on what people want to see in the game: swimming, flying vehicles, whatever it might be, new enemy factions, and there's a lot. I mean, a lot of these conversations are had internally at the studio. It comes down to like, what do we prioritize? What are the things that we want to focus on? And we still think that the core gameplay of Helldivers 2 has so much more to offer. So primarily looking at the core variation of how people play regular missions, how can we mix that up? How can we make the game more surprising? That's like what I see as one of the core critical parts that we need to improve on the game, so that we can increase the replayability, get more enjoyment for those players that have played 1,000 hours, but that doesn't impair the ability for new players coming in to play the game. Secondly, like if you look at a little bit longer perspective from just a pure creative standpoint, I mean, I absolutely want to see a larger vehicle arsenal, more sophisticated strategies and tactics that are employed at higher difficulties, more challenging content for those players that are on that kind of top level. And this, of course, includes things like bigger enemy variation. There's some thoughts and experimentations on what could happen if we add champions or boss fights into the game that are more substantial than the current battles. But also surprising elements that basically chucks a wrench into your mission as you play the more challenging missions. Because we know that when you're playing difficulty 10s, it's intense, but most of the time it is a shopping list of you have to do this, then that, and then extract. But what if suddenly during a mission, the entire mission parameters changed based on new information that was discovered during the mission, and that would just upset the stratagems that you brought, the plan that you made, and then you would have to coordinate with your team members and ask yourself, okay, well, how are we going to tackle this new challenge that's presented itself?
With the scale increasing, so player counts, the platforms, the different territories that have been added in since launch, what are the biggest surprises or lessons that you've learned, seen in supporting such a live service game at this scale, at this magnitude? Both the technical side, but also the community, game. A three-pronged question.
Yeah, right. One of the biggest challenges that we have is, of course, our technical depth. The more we build, the worse our tech debt gets. And I know there's a lot of you brilliant engineers out there that are saying like, well, given good development practices, you shouldn't be able to end up in this tech debt. I agree. But the problem is that we want to get content out at a rapid cadence. We want to get new features out at a rapid cadence. And we also want to launch on new platforms rapidly enough. Because for us, development time, 3 months of development time is nothing, but 3 months of wait for new content for the players is an eternity. So it's about balancing those factors. And given that you have to be on you have to be on the edge of what you're able to develop and release at the same time to be able to sustain a community in a live environment, which is a challenge. It's almost like being it's similar to racing, where you have to just be on the edge to just the edge of crashing to be able to be fast, to win. When it comes to the community, I'm surprised and I'm glad that the community is as positive as it is. I know we've had our ups and downs. It's so over and we're so back over and over again, and that's to be expected, and especially given some of the, strange decisions that we make here and there that may or may not be good for the game. But our heart is in the right place, I think. We want to create great experiences for the community. Do we succeed? Not always. About 50% of the time, I would say. So, but I am constantly surprised by how positive the community is and how positively the community responds when we actually do good things. And not only that, but if you look at the introduction of the Xbox players, how welcoming the rest of the community was to the Xbox players, and now how they've grown into an integral part of the Helldivers experience is just wonderful to see. Finally ending the console wars once and for all.
Who knew that you'd end it all?
Yeah.
The community often creates lores, memes, emergent stories, friendly fire, stratagem fails, all of that good stuff. How do you monitor or incorporate community-generated content, and will there ever be an official mode celebrating those emergent player stories?
It's an interesting one. So one of the discussions that we've had so many times is, could we get video streaming into the big TV on the ship so that you could celebrate community moments? It's always been sort of a pipe dream of realizing that, and maybe sometime in the future, because it's a rather large ask or a large feature. But I think we as a development studio, we have a deep appreciation for the community generated content or videos or memes or whatever is created, and we do celebrate it internally. But I think there is much more that we can do to just riff off what the community is doing, and even getting that to be seen in game as well. Because for me, what live service games are is that it's a dialogue between the developer and the community.
Love that answer. And it leads perfectly into our next segment, where we're actually going to take some questions that were shared by the propaganda commanders.
Oh, awesome.
So the front lines. The Gundam Boy asks, will we see more ship modules upgrades?
I sincerely hope so. I think, unfortunately, the ship module system is one of those systems that at the end of development, we had to just scale down a little bit. Our ambition level for it was much larger. And now we sort of pigeonhole ourselves in a way where we just add more ship modules. But what I would like to see is horizontal development of the ship modules, where you can go down the logistics path, but don't just upgrade it one step at a time, but instead make a decision in your progression tree and actually decide which way am I going to spend my resources. And some of these might or might not include, a forklift driver's license.
Another one from the Gundam Boy is, will we see possible upgrades for the mechs?
Yeah. So one of the bigger conversations around vehicles, mechs, the FRV, and upcoming vehicles is what's our ability to customize these. Personally, I would love to be able to customize my mech, choose maybe to have dual Gatling guns or dual rocket launchers on my mech. Maybe even upgrade it to a point where I could get the stratagem launcher back on the mech. Maybe replace one of the arms with that, or some other configuration. Same with the FRV. Upgrade the heavy machine gun to one of the Gatling gun or a laser turret or something like that. And we have discussed this quite extensively internally. The problem is that we made a decision early on where we added multiple mechs as very different stratagems. And that design has sort of pigeonholed us a little bit in how would we handle that going back? Would we consider those like a variant of the core mech, or would we remove stratagems? And I don't think removing stratagems is the right way to go, because we've already made that commitment to the community. So there's a couple of design issues that stand in the way, and some of the and some technical issues, of course. But those are things that we would just resolve. And then there's also the question of prioritization. If you look at the state of the game currently, where we have the performance issues and the technical issues, unfortunately, those kind of coders that can help fix the stability would also be the people that are able to improve the customization system for the mechs. And there, in that instance, it is our responsibility to the community to ensure that we resolve our stability and performance issues before we continue building new features that would inevitably cause more performance issues.
I'm sure the community appreciates that, as they've already been very vocal.
Yeah.
Doom721 asks, will there be harder modes or difficulties implemented for players that want it?
Yes, for sure. Getting to the top tier of players and providing a real challenge for them is something that is absolutely on the roadmap. And it's something that we're constantly talking about how to achieve that. The challenge here is actually performance, because we can't add more enemies, because then performance will suffer too much. Instead, there needs to be other ways of approaching that kind of difficulty. And we don't want to do it either by just boosting health or of enemies or any such mechanics, because what that would do is that it would remove some of the core enjoyment of what makes Helldivers. One way of sorting this is just to add more unknown elements to players, add more complexity to the missions, where team play and coordination is the requirement for completing these sort of missions. And it's something that the team is currently looking at, like how can we make the game more challenging for those top tier players.
Team play is always for the win. Doom721 continues to ask, will we see cryo or freeze weapons in the game?
That's a good question. It's not on the roadmap as far as I know. I mean, there's so many discussions going on. Like you got to remember that the development team of Helldivers is around 100 developers internally. And whenever I pass through the corridors, I hear discussions from team members around what we can do and what we should do, what the individual team members want to do. So there's always these sort of thoughts and ideas that are being surfaced, discussed within the team. Some come to fruition, others are abandoned or put in a drawer. But then that drawer is open at some point, and we go like, oh, well, this is actually a pretty good idea now. Yeah, so cryo weapons, maybe. We'll see.
We'll leave it at maybe. I love it. Doom721 continues to ask, will we get a level cap increase?
Yes, absolutely. When? Don't know. But it is one of those things that we constantly have on that's constantly slipping outside of the things that we want to get done for the next update.
I think it's going to make a lot of people very happy. Question here from Demo Storm, who asks, are there any plans to change the visuals on the Galactic war map?
Not currently, no. There's no plans to change the visuals on the Galactic war map. I know that the Galactic war map has gone through so many iterations. It's gone from being like this proper holographic map with almost realistic naval visuals to one that was very arcadey and tied to, basically looked cartoony, to the one that we have currently, which is some way of an intermediate step. With that said, though, there's a lot of mechanics that the Galactic war map isn't showing. A lot of things that's not represented in the UI. Those we are improving. There's an initiative to make the Galactic war more informative, to be more clear, and to present some of that awesome some of those awesome mechanics that are in the background, and especially for new players getting learning and being able to figure out how the Galactic War works. Like, well, what does it mean when we're attacking a planet? What does it mean when the enemies are launching an attack on us? And all of those mechanics can be more well articulated throughout the UI.
I love it. There's a lot to dive into there. So
Yeah, and
thank you
especially
once again.
and especially with given the community made Galactic War that's available. I can't remember the URL for it, but which is just great. Like that's the level that where we should be aiming. So to whoever out there that made the community made Galactic War, awesome job.
The Cold Brew has some questions for you. First one, what would it take for the FRV and exosuits to get a garage where we can customize specs, attachments, weapons?
You know what? This is actually one of those features that were cut before release. So if you go to, on the ship and look down into the hangar space, you can see that there's various alcoves. Those were supposed to be for the mech and for the other vehicles that you would be able to get in the game. So it's something that we have been talking about. It's like, how can we get people down there to be able to view the mechs and the other vehicles that they have?
The Cold Brew goes on to ask, why haven't we seen major orders that bring new weapons or tools?
Right. Major order brings new weapons or tools. It's absolutely something that's been requested by the Game Master team over here at Arrowhead. They want to have more power, more flexibility. We all want them to have more power and more flexibility. You guys in the community want them to have more power and flexibility. And it really comes down to a prioritization of what are we actually doing. There is, I don't want to kind of say too much, but there is a large initiative going on within the studio of giving the Game Master more power. So, and I'll leave it at that.
Very exciting. The Cold Brew asks, what are the thoughts on adding in-game compendium to build the community lore?
Awesome question. And also something that was started and then paused because we had to focus on other things. And this is a compendium, we call it the Galactic War History, which would basically pull data from the entire community, all of the things that the community have done, and basically create a history book of everything that the community did. It's one of those things that we really wanted to do, but unfortunately, it's got a lower priority than ensuring that there's more mission variety, new enemies, new guns, and so forth for players. This is also bundled with the encyclopedia of the galaxy, where players would be able to review information around the different enemies, different weapons, the history of Super Earth, and so forth. Getting all of those like as a proper lore Bible, a lore central part. And if that could also handle user-generated content, that would be aspirational. It would be an amazing way for the community to chronicle what is going on and what has happened in the Galactic War since the start of the game.
Let's move forward. Red Monster Thing asks, what is your favorite game?
Oh, my favorite game. It's such a tough question to answer, really. Like because it depends on mood and sort of era. I think there's a substantial amount of games that have had a profound impact on me. Of course, the original Zelda games have been a massive influence, just in the way that they're able to bring people together. That kind of schoolyard mentality of like, how do I complete this area of Zelda and whatnot? Especially playing that as a kid is significant. Currently, on the other hand, I'm playing a lot of simulators. iRacing is, of course, one of the biggest ones. Escape from Tarkov is a massive inspiration in the way that it dares to push borders on like what is a shooter. It's plenty. Love City Skylines. It's great games. Like
It's a great game.
just organize things perfectly without
Totally.
any sort of yeah. Well, traffic is still gonna be a bitch, but one of the greatest things about the games industry is the diversity that it brings on, the diversity of play experiences, and especially now, like if I could go back to my 8-year-old self and tell that kid about the width, the breadth of how large the games industry would be and how many games there are, I think I would blow that kid's mind.
Totally. It's kind of crazy when people say games industry and then think about the variety of games that are out there, that it's almost unlimited in its genres.
Yeah.
And a gamer that plays a cozy game can be a gamer that plays a first person shooter or not at all. My mother plays Sudoku every day on her iPad, 2 hours. She's a hardcore gamer.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that we're blessed to be in this time and enjoy the what the games industry is able to produce. Though there is, I think, a little bit of an issue in that we see a convergence a lot of times from the larger entities in the games industry, where AAA studios and big publishers, they all try to fish in the same water, and therefore that gets condensed, and unfortunately, people get sick and tired of it. People want diverse experiences, and it's just a game for everyone is a game for no one.
Well put. Red Monster Thing asks, would you ever consider adding in custom mission modifiers, such as letting players choose to dive with a limited amount or no stratagems, but for extra XP?
Yeah, so this goes back to talking about how can Helldivers become a more challenging game and challenge those players that are like on the top tier. It's absolutely an alternative path that we could go down, but it would probably be presented as this operation has these modifiers associated with it. Would you want to take on this challenge? Rather than the player being able to customize the experience. And this comes down to the sort of believability of the universe. I cannot choose what kind of opponent, the army composition of the opponent, of the bugs or the bots or the Illuminate. But on the other hand, I could get intel that this mission we can't use stratagems for whatever reason. And we have some cool game modes upcoming that has some of it's cool stuff upcoming.
Cool stuff upcoming once again. First Colonial Regiment asks, what are the exact hard factors of liberation? As we understand, the difficulty is the single largest factor to be considered, but what else plays a part in liberation contribution?
Right. Unfortunately, it was quite some time since I since I looked at that system. But difficulty is the main factor, combined with how many missions and side objectives that players complete. So the star rating that you get at the end of the mission is multiplied in some way with the difficulty level of the mission. So if you get a 1-star difficulty 10, it's going to be worse than a 5-star difficulty 9.
Exactly. Commissar Kai asks, how would you like to see the Galactic War take shape over the next year?
Oh, amazing question. So I really want the community to have more power, the community to have more strategic power in the Galactic War, and for the community to be able to surprise us in the way that you make strategic decisions. And this comes down to like, what are the chess pieces that are available to the community? Which chess pieces are available to the game master, and which rules do we play by? And as long as those rules are clearly understood, and then the community can start reasoning around them. And then it becomes a challenge for the community to try to organize themselves. So with that, clans for organized play, more strategic pieces, chess pieces that can move around the map and have a larger impact, so that the players can have more autonomy and more agency in how they try to beat the game and win the Galactic War.
Win the Galactic War. Dr. Pooplove asks, are there any plans for making samples more meaningful?
Yes. It's a constant conversation internally at the studio. There's been there's been a lot of discussion around how samples can be used, what they should be used for, and right now there's some initiatives that are being tested, implemented in how we can spend samples, but nothing conducive.
Dr. Pooplove goes on asking, are there any plans for quality of life improvements? For example, with an ever-increasing arsenal of weapons and stratagems, it would be nice to create a few preset loadouts so we can be ready to spread democracy sooner. One very close to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that are, when you look at a development team, and especially a development team that is trying to push out as much content and create as many features as possible in as short a time as possible to satisfy the needs of the community, one of those things that have a tendency to be down prioritized is those quality of life fixes. So what we're trying to do internally at the studio is we're trying to give a little bit more non-planned work for developers so that we can pay attention to quality of life issues. One of them being, of course, loadout templates, preset loadouts, whatever word you choose to describe it. But there's so many of those kind of small quality of life fixes that could help infinitely in how good the game would feel to play.
Johan, this interview has been a quality of life update and fix. So I thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
See you next time.
Until next time.